Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Atlanta DSA Educations Committee first Socialist Night School of the year 2023. We're super excited to have all of you guys here to be addressing such a fundamental question. What is democratic socialism? So first, a brief overview of what we're going to look at over the course of the next hour. We're going to start by defining democratic socialism. Then we're going to be discussing DSA's theory of change. And finally, we're going to look at DSA's program and do a quick dive into one aspect of that program, the labor wing of the movement. But first, let's do a quick warm-up discussion. To get our brains warmed up for the next few minutes, here's a quick question. In 10 words or less, what does the term socialism mean to you already? Take a moment, think about it, and when you're ready, feel free to type your answer into the chat, and Julie will read it off.
A period of transition between capitalism and communism. Don't be shy, y'all. Let's hear what you got to say. Working class control over society and the economy. When laborers collectively own and/or control their workplace. A political, economic, philosophical system that prioritizes community well-being and discourages profiteering. A system that truly puts the power in the hands of the working class. I mean, we could take one more. Anybody else have one? Or not, we can move on. Scott?
Okay. Yeah, my answer is what I used underneath the beginning of the question. I said a socialism solution to the failures of capitalism, but then I would add with liberty and justice to make it 10 and give it like that Americana kind of like sprinkle. Was there one more, Julie? I think I saw one more there in the chat.
We have one more, yeah. An economic system that respects the laws of physics. Like that. Awesome.
Cool. So then let's get started with defining democratic socialism. DSA's definition is fundamentally, socialism is a project that demands that the means of production are owned and controlled by the workers. Means of production being how things are produced, workers being the people who are producing the things. We criticize capitalism and our current system of economy and organize those who suffer under its ruling class into unions, political parties, and other organizations to fight oppression and injustice. So, the means of production are collectively owned. 2, democracy should govern our workplaces as well as our social and political spheres. Goods and services are produced to satisfy our wants and our needs directly instead of through a profit motive. What surplus value there is distributed fairly amongst the working class and prevented from being concentrated upwards to a billionaire class. And finally, everyone has the right to access the social goods that guarantee their well-being. So that would be things such as housing, healthcare, childcare, education, and employment. So next, let's take a look at how we are currently organized under capitalism, most notably within our workplaces. It's mainly a top-down system with CEO, board of directors, owners, capitalists, determining how everything is going to function based upon their wealth. Then each lower rung of the organization is meant to serve whatever the boss tells them to do, with the workers doing the work, and also the workers being the vast majority of the people within the system. Instead, we propose a model of organization that allows the individual more direct access to the governances of the organization they participate in. So this is what grassroots organizing would look like, with an organizer identifying a leader and then those leaders being connected with each other. You may see this model on campuses, in campaigns, worker cooperatives, or in other workplaces when building unions. Underpinned and supported by democracy, the structure presented allows for an individual to more immediately access control over the actions of the organization through their representative of the committee. In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx laid out three criteria that he sees as separating socialist organizations from all other. Number one, socialists are internationalists, meaning that we understand that workers in different countries have more in common with us than we do the capitalists or the wealthy in our own country. Living in the country that is the pillar that maintains global capitalism, the actions of our country and our people have far-reaching consequences for the rest of the world. It is only by listening to and aligning with those directly targeted by our imperialistic policies, our imperialistic, that we can begin to work to build a better world for everyone. This is directly from the political platform adopted by DSA at the 2021 convention. Number two, socialists are non-sectarian. Sectarianism comes about when we stop seeing each other as comrades engaged in a mutual struggle, but as competitors in a race for power. It's essentially cutting off the nose of our movement to spite our face. DSA's approach is fundamentally one that is anti-authoritarian and inclusive. Having and discussing differences in opinion is, of course, totally okay and encouraged, but when a fraction of us begins believing that they have all the answers and should lead the working class, we stop being unified and democratic in our struggle. So some examples of sectarian behavior would be creating front groups, assuming our definition of radical is universal or the only one, telling others how they should organize their own communities, or seeking to control coalitions. And finally, socialists build mass movements and mass organizations. We hear the term mass organizations a lot, but it isn't super well defined. It's often just left to mean that an organization is big, has a lot of people. But when we talk about mass work, that means that we are working to build a movement of the majority, meaning that we work with larger organizations and people who don't call themselves socialists. It's important to emphasize that this majority that we're working to build is built up by communities that have shared values, beliefs, and interests that go beyond the individual members' preferences. We want to work with the masses of people because we need to be much bigger than we are now to win democratically fought struggles. So like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there are many prominent organizers throughout history who have done mass work. We can look to them as examples of human decency, revolutionary justice, and the possibility of building a better world. Ella Baker is another such example. She encouraged the devolution of expertise, the generalization of the intellectual activity, and the widening of genuine democratic participation. When we're building political knowledge within our communities, it's useful to lean upon human values like safety, mutual help, non-coercion, and reasoned debate instead of name-calling or personal attacks and things like that. In basic terms, our ideology is one that values compassionate correction instead of punishment. I'd like once again to quickly reinforce the importance of democracy. We want to end the corrupt way that public goods and services have been privatized and expand democracy into the private sector and fully realize the democracy that is in our political space. So because we believe in the power and justice of democratic systems, we believe that expanding democracy to more aspects of our lives will escalate the speed that workers may see as the means of production. And given the majority of communities believe in the equal moral worth of each citizen, we should provide the necessities for human development. A lot of the negative feelings that people may have that are associated with socialism, average American workers, are mostly associated with regimes that we would probably call authoritarian or statist. To fulfill the promise of political democracy in our country and simultaneously redeem the revolutionary struggles of those in the past, our job is to work towards a society characterized by equality, solidarity, and participation. And finally, maintaining a healthy and functional democracy is a crucially important part of socialism, which is hence why we use the term democratic socialism. History has not yet provided an example of democratic socialism taking over. We don't have a country that works as a prime example of what we want to do or what we want to build. But fundamentally, we can believe that we will have to build socialism democratically, or it probably will not be built at all. So let's take 10 minutes and turn the floor over to you guys. We'd like to request, for the sake of time, that you keep your comments to just about a minute or so. And as a quick reminder, we also do progressive stacks. So if you haven't had a chance to speak and you would like to, we will call on you first and bring you up to the front of the line. If you would like to address one of these questions, just type stack in the chat and Julie will call on you and facilitate the discussion. The questions being, what are some of the key features of democratic socialism? And what problems of existing society do democratic socialists seek to solve? Okay. No, I think Joe is asking the exact right questions. How do we connect with the working class in our country, in our time? And what kind of politics are those people that we're trying to connect with? What are they willing to participate with? Which leads us awesome. It's an awesome transition. Thank you so much. Into DSA's theory of change. How are we gonna make this thing happen? So first, let's talk about praxis. Praxis is when our theories are embodied by our actions and we take the time to reflect upon our theories and actions to make sure that they're consistent. It's where the rubber meets the road. We can't build a mass movement if we just have theories that we never act on, but we also won't be successful if we just act on impulse or without a clear strategy. We need a clear political analysis, and we need to take actions based upon that analysis, and then go back, reflect upon our actions and our analysis, and make sure that they continue to gel. This quote here is from Antonio Gramsci's notebooks on the philosophy of practice, and I don't want to delve too deep into the philosophy of practice, because if anyone's read philosophy, you know it can go on forever. And you could do a whole college semester of lectures just on this one topic, but I think what I want to take away from it is that it's important to point out that it's really fun to read and understand these theories, but we don't necessarily need to cite them to connect our movement with the average working class American. It's not a question of introducing from scratch a scientific form of thought, but renovating and making critical an already existing activity. The working class already knows that this system isn't working. It's not gelling. Something's off. People can't live their lives under it. What they do about that is what's up for question. That's what we need to give them the answer to. So for us, number one, the wealthy are the problem. They prevent change because it hurts their bottom line. That's it. That's the problem. Poor and working class people are the agents of change because the capitalists need them to work and the politicians need them to vote. Otherwise, they can't continue to maintain their power. Number three, we can make change when we exercise that reality that the system needs workers to work for it to function. When we are united and we have the power if we are united, then we will have the power to remake our systems. So our vision within DSA is a long-term one. So the things that we fight for now must build our power. So we fight for transformative reforms. There are three criteria for transformative reform. One, it's winning real material change. So things that will affect the quality of working class people's lives. Number two, things that shift power away from the capitalist class and towards the working class. Then that will increase our leverage. And finally, confronting the capitalist class through collective action. Things that will alter our consciousness and make people continue to question capitalism as it currently exists. The reason that we do this is because people that are struggling to survive are more likely to get involved if there's an immediate improvement that they can win. The point of all of our campaigns is to build our power, to position ourselves for larger fights in the future. And we know that we can only win if we have everyone fighting together. People realize their true power by participating in real world action and communicating with one another as human beings in a way that does the exact thing that we were talking about with praxis of renovating and making critical their already existing analysis. So next, we're going to talk about what a program is. It's not exactly a list of demands, but it's also a cohesive analysis and perspective based upon the current conditions of the time that the program is put together with clear political goals. So the Communist Manifesto is an example of a program. It begins with an analysis with its political terrain that it's operating in. It identifies its base, clarifies its political principles and its relationships with other organizations, and draws together a number of interconnected struggles around a common vision and strategy. It even, the preface of the 1872 German edition of the manifesto uses the term program explicitly. This is an example of what the Communist Party of the 1848's demands were. They're not exactly our demands living in 21st century America, but at the same time, we can see the lineage and connection to the root of these ideas. So oftentimes, what sometimes is referred to as a program is just this. This comes from Chapter 2 of the manifesto, and this is a list of demands that the Communist League should fight for. Another famous program is the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party. This comes from a platform that was published in their weekly newsletter, including a section, What We Believe, that further explains each point, gives it a lot more detail. And it was later amended to add the demand of free health care for all Black and oppressed people and an immediate end to wars of aggression. Next thing is a strategy. So a strategy is different from a program because a program is the list of demands with the analysis. The strategy is how we go about getting it. Strategy is a plan to win. It's an overarching method that you use to build power using a series of escalating tactics. DSA strategy at its core is to build a mass organization to connect and unify communities across the United States. As we know, having an analysis and some demands isn't enough to get what we want. Strategy is the path we take to win the transformation that we seek. So short term, we begin by organizing around projects and campaigns that serve a larger interconnected vision to transform our power relations. Medium term, we look at leveraging the gains that we win into a more offensively oriented changes. And long term, once it's viable, employ the strength of a mass socialist party or a coalition of leftist and progressive parties in order to win political power and begin the process of socialist transformation. Ultimately, the strategy consists of fighting on a number of interconnected fronts in the short term, leveraging gains made in these struggles, and then employing the strength of a mass socialist party or coalition of leftist and progressive parties to win political power. So once again, let's take 10 minutes, turn the floor over to you guys. Take time. The questions at hand are, what is an example of a real material change that we have won? And if one doesn't come to mind, then what is one that you think that we could win in the future? And then the second question is, how is winning material change a part of our strategy to build democratic socialism? Julie?
Thank you. Go ahead, guys. And guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I guess. Go ahead and stack. The questions are, what, you don't have to answer all three in your answer. You could answer just one. What's an example of a real material change that we have won? We mean DSA by that, right? What the DSA has won, or maybe the Atlanta DSA has won. What's one that we could win in the future? And how is winning material change part of our strategy to build democratic socialism? Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, so one example is in Atlanta. So we've been organizing around abortion rights, and we got the city council to allocate $300,000 to an abortion fund, and then also got the DeKalb County government to commit to have DeKalb police like not participate in any abortion prosecution. So those are things that do have real material impact on folks' lives. And future goal would, of course, be legalizing abortion rights in Georgia, and getting rid of the heartbeat ban, because that would, significantly increase people's control over their bodies, over their lives, and tilt the balance of power towards workers and away from capitalists who can just get abortions anyway, regardless of the law, because they can just fly people out to blue states, right? Another example would be in New York City, in New York DSA, they have a bunch of, they have a socialist caucus in the legislature with, I think, like 8 state legislators that are socialists now. And they, as part of their work electorally, they were able to pass like an income tax increase on people making over $1 million, which was a big like increase in the state budget, and like literally just through changing the tax brackets, like moved money away from rich people towards public services. So that's something where that is much farther away in Georgia, but is an example of like a real thing happening.
Thank you, Nate. And I'm Stack, so I'll go ahead and say it. I'm looking at the last question. How is winning material change part of our strategy to build? When we win material change for people, we show that change is possible. And that makes all the difference. When people, so many people feel that nothing can be done, that there's no chance of let alone overthrowing capitalism, just making improvements, getting the government to help people, working people, ordinary people, getting them to help us at all. What we want is to put power in working people's hands. When we show that that's possible, both by winning material change and also by the way we conduct our business internally as an organization, the way we do things in DSA, it shows that democratic, I don't know, it shows that change is possible, and that the way we're going to try and administer it is going to be democratic, the way we already administer our affairs democratically. Someone else.
So moving on, we're going to take a quick look at the DSA's platform. You can find all of these at dsausa.org. And each of them has in-depth analysis as well as demands, like the programs that we were looking at earlier. Analysis and demands that address our country in this century, in this time period. So the major demands are deepening and strengthening democracy, abolition of the carceral state, abolition of white supremacy, a powerful labor movement, economic justice, gender and sexuality justice, Green New Deal, health justice, housing for all, and international solidarity and immigration justice. We are going to deep dive into just one of these for now. If you want to deep dive into any more of these, once again, it's dsausa.org. Feel free to read at your pleasure. In the first half of the 20th century, the American working class exercised through class conflict in the workplace and in solidarity more broadly, enough power to win many of the rights that we still have today, including weekend, 40-hour work week, things like that. Since the Red Scare, the capital has undertaken an organized political offensive, systematically dismantling legal rights of unions and of workers. We've been in the process of trying to, they've been in the process of trying to pull back as many of those rights as possible for decades now. And workers are beginning to notice. This is the requirement of private ownership and control of economic resources, subverting the interdependent nature of capitalist production, which is directly what Marx said would be the undoing of capitalism. Rather than compete with workers for their labor or for workers with other capitalists, wealthy individuals want to maneuver themselves and their wealth to be completely isolated from our actions or the government. The process for traditional American unions has moved class conflict out of the workplace and into the legal system. And this is most commonly referred to as business unionism, whereas the union operates as a business as opposed to a completely different kind of political and economic entity. The unions will adopt no strike clauses, and union leadership will cut backroom deals and make unnecessary concession to the bosses. But we do have cause for optimism. Workplace organizing in response to COVID has indicated a rise in a fighting spirit amongst union and non-union workers, and this was also on the rise before the pandemic as well. So this is a broader trend with Americans and their relationship to their economy. The importance of fighting for a vibrant labor movement in building socialist power can't be overstated. The trend was already rising, but like many things, the pandemic has made more obvious the need for workers to take matters into their own hands. So, as DSA members, it's imperative that we fan the flames and get people talking about unions if they aren't already. So we can do that by taking rank and file union jobs, organizing new unions in our workplaces, building reform caucuses within existing unions, and providing support for workers that are on strike or want to walk out, which is all things that the Atlanta DSA and the DSA more broadly is engaging. So our demands for our platform. This is directly from the platform. We want social ownership of all major industry and infrastructure, work for all who want it with a federal jobs guarantee, a just transition for fossil fuel workers and other workers who don't serve the common good. We want a 4-day, 32-hour work week, immediately raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour with no exceptions for disability or tipped workers. We want a legal right to a union for all, which would be in the PRO Act and repealing the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947 or 48, I believe, which allows unions to get away with and not necessarily support workers to the fullest extent. And it also makes it harder for individuals to unionize. So we want unions to be recognized with a simple majority vote of the workers. And we also want to cover farm workers, street vendors, day laborers, domestic workers, and gig economy workers under the National Labor Relations Act. We want international equality for all workers through enacting labor and trade agreements to maintain equal rights, a living wage, and safe working conditions, and collective bargaining rights. We want the right to strike for all workers. We want to end at-will employment, end right-to-work laws, and finally, we want a dignified life for all from birth through old age with universal programs like public child care, education, disability insurance, unemployment insurance, and pensions. So some of our active campaigns to fight for that program. Solidarity is Brewing is the first national labor campaign that DSA has undertaken, with 80 DSA chapters actively supporting Starbucks workers who are attempting to organize their restaurants. You can join bi-weekly calls on the national level, or if you want to get involved on the local level, the Atlanta DSA has been involved with strikes for the Starbucks workers of the Howell Mill restaurant and the Ainsley Mall. You can email labor@ATL-DSA to get involved in their meetings, and they would be more than happy to have you and get you plugged in on what they're doing. Some of the other campaigns, we have logistical things. So that was supporting union workers when they want to strike with walkouts. So we've helped Amazon and Nabisco workers when they've striked or done their walkouts. There's also the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, which is a joint effort between DSA and the United Electrical Workers to help any worker in any industry in any part of the country connect with experienced labor organizers to help them learn how to form a union. And finally, the Restaurant Organizing Project, which is built with guidance and resources from DSA's National Labor Committee to support workers organizing in the food service industry. All right, so finally, last section of discussion. We still got about 15 minutes or so we can just take the time and just talk back and forth. How does DSA's demands for labor that we've just gone through relate to our theory of change? And how does winning changes for union advance our revolutionary aspirations? And finally, if anyone has any questions that they would like to pose, I think that we'd be more than happy to take them and discuss them. Julie?